I've given myself this cylinder and I'm gonna play around a bit with deformations. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna apply a transform deformer. And as you can see, this is giving me a locator, and as soon as I move this locator around, it transforms the entire mesh, which is really not that interesting. Obviously, I could have done that simply by grabbing the cylinder directly. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give myself a Falloff. I'm gonna use this linear Falloff, and I'm gonna set it to Y. So now if I drag around the transform effector, I get a much more interesting effect. Now, in order to really understand what's happening here, I personally find it easiest to simply look at the network of deformations down in this node window, in this nodal view. So if I click on this input with the middle mouse button and keep doing so until I don't see any yellow spots anymore, if you like, I get a network that describes to me how exactly this whole thing is happening. What it shows me is that there is a transform that is feeding into the cylinder, into the mesh I should say, and that transform is collecting data from these two nodes. One of them is a transform effector, and the other one is the linear Falloff. Now, this whole network was set up for me as soon as I clicked on this shortcut, but it's actually not a bad idea to learn to set up this network completely from scratch without using this shortcut. So that's what I'm gonna do now. Let's just get rid of the transform, the linear Falloff, yes to all, and the transform effector. And let's start from scratch. First of all, I'm going to give myself a general influence. The general influence was that thing that sat in the middle that was collecting all the data. That's basically to transform. And as soon as I connect it, you can see that it has done what it did before. It just becomes a child item of the cylinder. Then I'm going to give myself a transform effector, which immediately creates this locator. And as soon as I connect that one to the transform, it works exactly like it did before. And all I want to do now is give myself the linear Falloff. Sorry, the linear Falloff. Here we are. Ah, come on. Again, I'm gonna set this linear Falloff to Y. I'm gonna feed it in here. And the result is that we've got the same setup as we had in the first place. But this time we did it completely manually. No, the result is exactly the same. You know, this is exactly the same as would have happened if I just clicked on this button here. So it is exactly this is really just a shortcut to create this. Now looking at this network down here in the nodal view is actually good because it gives you much more control. And one of the things I can do now is I'm gonna give myself a second cylinder because I just like cylinders. I'm gonna move it over here. I'm gonna drag the second cylinder into the nodal view too. And the first thing I can do here is I can actually reuse this transform as often as I want. I'm gonna apply the same transform to the second cylinder. So now you've got two different items being deformed by the same transform. That's already much more interesting. Certainly that opens quite a few possibilities, but there's much more that we can do. And in order to show that, I'm going to give myself a new influence, a new general influence I should say, and I'm going to apply this new general influence to the second cylinder. And the first thing I can do is I'm going to reuse this transform effector. I can do that. There we are. And the result is exactly what you expect to happen. The second cylinder is now also being transformed by the transform effector, but it hasn't got the linear Falloff applied to it. In fact, I could apply a second Falloff, second linear Falloff, a new linear Falloff I should say, to this little fella here. I'm gonna set it to Y again, and I'm gonna invert it. So now you've got this slightly surreal effect of both these cylinders being transformed by the same transformer factor, but being modulated by different linear Falloffs. Another thing I could have done, of course, is I'm just gonna get rid of this one. Delete it. I'm gonna give myself a different transformer factor, and you can see what's gonna happen now. I'm gonna apply the same linear Falloff to both meshes, but this mesh now is gonna have no, hang on. I should have gotten rid of this, shouldn't I? So now I've got a new transformer factor for the mesh on the right, and still the original transformer factor for the mesh on the left, but both have got the same linear Falloff applied to it. So there you have it. As soon as you start dragging your meshes and all your transforms down here in the Nodal View, you get far more possibilities. The one thing to remember though is that you always need one of these general influences, or any other sort of influence. That's the thing that always threw me in the beginning, because you can, bizarrely enough, drag a transformer factor straight in here. Modo will not complain, it will not throw any error messages, but it doesn't have any effect. So do keep in mind that you need one of these influences, but as soon as you do that, you've got an enormous degree of freedom here to do what you want.